I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, AfterBuzzers, we are back, and we cannot wait to get to episode 4, the last episode of the series of Self-Made, which is based off the life of Madam C.J. Walker. I'm going to be the host of the panel tonight. I'm Dot McDonald, but I've got some pretty amazing panelists I can't wait to introduce you to. We've got Lee, who's a part of the 50 and Fabulous Club. What's going on, Lee?
Hi, Lee. Hi, everybody. This is Lee. How are you?
Hey. We've also got Chef Beans and Mental Cuisine. What's going on over there, Chef?
Oh, what's going on, y'all? I didn't even know y'all was there. What's going on, y'all? Oh, we hosting today. What's up?
I loved the turnaround. I loved it. It was a shocker. It was a surprise. So here we are, y'all. We are at the final episode of this 4-episode series, and we're really feeling that we're at the plight of her career, right? So we're seeing like the lavishness. She's popping champagne. She's in New York. Everything is going great. And I really wanted to ask you guys, Chef, did you get a sense of like she was in awe at, where she's gotten herself to? Or do you think she was kind of like, this is the work that I've put in and here we are. I knew this is where I was going to be.
I believe it was a combination of both. I even feel like she quoted this in, I could have never dreamt it, because there's one thing that brings into existence. There's things to have like big goals, but I feel like once you're actually in it, you have to, or even if you don't take the time, it kind of just happens like, wow, how did I get here? Not how did I get here as far as like I stumbled, because there's in no sense do I mean she stumbled, she didn't trip, she didn't crawl, she emerged into this person she's supposed to be. I just feel like she just kind of took the time back to be like, go ahead, girl.
Okay, and Lee, what were your thoughts on kind of seeing her at this career and having so many successes? Do you think she was taken aback by any of it, or do you think she felt she was exactly where she was supposed to be?
Well, I think first of all, she had to believe that she deserved what she, worked for and earned, because she did. It was blood, sweat, and tears the entire way. She didn't have anybody really motivating her. She was motivated from the inside out because she believed that she deserved all the wonderful things that she worked for. I think there's always an element of awe when we achieve what we dream about. However, I think she was immersed in, having finally arrived. She got over a lot of hurdles emotionally, financially, and so forth. And I think she was finally beginning to sort of settle into her wealth and really enjoy the benefits of what she had worked so hard to achieve.
All right. Well, almost like right away, they kind of threw us right into this health issue that Madam C.J. Walker is facing with her kidneys. And I immediately, for myself, kind of started replaying the previous episodes and how they always kind of featured food and the things she was cooking. Now, watching it, I didn't think anything of it. I just think that soul food and cooking big meals is a part of the African-American community. But now I'm kind of wondering, were they showing those elements so that we would have a place to draw from where this kind of kidney issue came up? Did you think that at all, Lee?
I did. The reality is, back in the day, we all loved the highly seasoned foods, the fatty foods that we grew up on. They were tasty, delicious. But as we know now, which they probably didn't have the research and data back in the early 1900s, those foods can be pretty devastating, for our bodies, and they're not that healthy for us to consume. So she enjoyed the fruits of her labor. And unfortunately, it probably did compromise her health to some degree. And eventually, I believe, if my research is correct, I believe she did pass of high blood pressure and other components involved in eating those types of foods and enjoying that type of a diet.
Oh, wow. Chef, were you able to make that connection when you heard about her health condition?
No, I didn't make the connection at all. And I'm usually like big on finding out little Easter eggs and nuggets, but I was just, I knew that she died at somewhat of a young age compared, like, especially with all the ground that she covered, but I wasn't sure that it came from, like, I guess, poor eating. When I saw the aesthetics of the culinary aspect of episodes prior, I thought they were just more so showing, like, this is what we were eating. I didn't know they were going to connect it to that being the reason why she perished. So no, I didn't catch it, but I think that's a great point that you both just like mentioned.
Perfect. And so we've got to talk about this because we brought it up in our previous after show about how strong Madam CJ Walker was for, you know, saying no to CJ after he had cheated on her and she was standing her ground. And then in this episode, she has sex with him. And I'm like, okay, where is this coming from? What was her incentive and what was her motive? Chef, why did she have sex with CJ? Like what happened there?
Well, and I can only speak from a man's point of view, but I know that when sometimes people just got that itch that they need scratched, you know what I mean? She went to that old thing to get that little scratching, but a wise woman told me, if your beard doesn't connect, neither can we. And as you can see, my beard is and we can they just weren't connecting at the end of that intimate relationship. It just wasn't there anymore. So she scratched the itch, but the connection was gone.
So you think she was just trying to see if there was something possibly still there, still holding on to it from a man's perspective.
No,
so I got to go over to my lady.
I think she just wanted to I just think she just wanted to get that little scratch like that.
Oh, gotcha. So you just think that she had a need that needed to be fulfilled and he was convenient.
She was in control. It was right. Her. She was in control.
It was her. So Lee, I'm wondering if you felt the same way I felt, where you were a little disappointed in Madam CJ Walker, or could you possibly find some type of reason that would make sense for her to engage in sexual activity with this guy who cheated on her?
Well, okay, first of all, I've never been married, all right? So I don't know that married connection. However, I will say these were people that shared a lot of history. And obviously they had a spark, something that kept them together for a very long time through a lot of adversity. I think it was just a moment of passion that spark came back and she kind of lost her mind. I believe she wasn't going to take him back. I knew she wasn't, because she's a woman. Once she makes up her mind, that's it. And that theme was played out through the entire series. When she makes a decision to do something, she sticks by it. However, you know, the heart wants what it wants. And I think under the circumstances, because of the level of relationship they had, I mean, obviously he loved her. I believe he still loved her, even though they were divorcing, and he would have stayed with her because he asked her more than once to take him back. I think it was just a moment of realizing that they'll probably never be together again. And she just wanted to have that one last connection with a man she shared so much history with throughout the years.
All right. And I know that there was the scene between Dora and CJ when they're on the phone, and Dora is, really expressing her frustration. And she said a line that brought me back to what we previously talked about when she said, "I'm a star too, And I know we were trying to initially figure out why she was after CJ. And we were thinking it had, to do with Madam CJ Walker and her kind of just being like, well, if you're not treating him right and you don't make him feel like a man, I can do that. But when I heard that statement, I totally saw it completely different. And now I see this woman who's just by any means necessary trying to get in this spotlight. Did you feel that, Lee?
Yes, really, her motivation was money and rising up the social ladder and having status. I'm sure she had probably a sexual connection with him because he's an attractive man. However, I think her ultimate motive was to achieve social status and wealth and make a name for herself.
And Chef, were you getting those vibes from her too? Like, this might not have anything to do with, Madam CJ Walker or CJ. This has to do with this woman trying to rise to the top and rise to the occasion.
Absolutely. I feel like it had to do with status. Especially during those times, like I said, for the average or the quintessential Black woman, you are to be inferior to your man. What your man says goes. You're going to stay home, take care of the kids, family, everything like that. But to see an independent Black woman rise who has standards worthy of emulation, she's trying to put herself in that same limelight. So how does she attack her? She goes at her weak spot when she sees her husband is vulnerable. He's like an injured lamb. So she pounces on him. And once she gets that, she's still trying to milk him for everything that he got, whether it's So what are some secrets that you have? Because I still have to shine above this darker skinned woman. So it was about status and climbing the ladder the whole
And
time.
the whole time. Well, I know we were just talking about how they've kind of been omitting the challenges against Black and people, and we haven't seen any of that kind of represented in the previous episodes. And here was the first time that we really got to dive into that world with the death of Sweetness. And so I just wanted to ask you all, how important do you think it was for them to include that race reality that was going on outside of the in-house things that was happening? How important do you think it was for them to include that? Because Sweetness was a character that, you know, kind of came and he went. I thought the fight would be the end, and they kind of brought him back. So there must be something there. What were you thinking for it, Chef?
I think it was very important to show that because like we brought up before, a lot of times when it comes to situations like this, people always think it's a Black versus white thing. They always think that, but if we think about the Jim Crow laws, the different things that were kind of put in stone for us to turn against each other, they were still very prevalent even after we became free, quote unquote free. So I think it's just very important to see like how certain money was donated or allocated to help the business rise, but also to see the personal and the characteristic traits that could have potentially harmed her business. So I think they did a great job at portraying that.
And Lee, what were your thoughts on, you know, kind of incorporating that storyline in it at the end? Because they saved it.
I think it was important to show that element of Black life and Black history because lynching up until really even the 50s and 60s was occurring in the Deep South. And so I like the idea that the conflict has been initially between light-skinned Blacks and dark Black people, Blacks with skin within the Black community versus white against Black. And really, I have to say, for the most part, the whites who have been in the series have really been the bankers, business owners, investors, and there was really not a lot of conflict more than other than just a business decision being made based upon a product and the owner of the business. So I think that was handled beautifully and realistically because these things happen. If you remember the story of Emmett Till, who allegedly in the late 50s whistled at a white woman, allegedly, and he ended up losing his life over it. He was lynched and shot, and the whole story is horrendous for this young man to have lost his life in a grocery store, a little, country store where this white woman stated he allegedly whistled at her, and then her relatives, her husband and a friend of his, lynched him and killed him. So that was a reality in Black life, especially in the early 1900s and through the 1950s and 60s. So I think it was handled with dignity as much as you can have a sense of dignity, for the situation in regards to how the family reacted. It was realistic. They lost someone they loved, even though, they were at odds with Sweetness throughout the series. I think it was important to show that element so that it didn't appear that the entire story was based on a woman's success and conflict within her family. There were many other important aspects of Black life, historically speaking, that were happening during that time in history.
Yeah, I immediately thought of Emmett Till when that situation occurred. The story was a little similar, so I immediately thought of that. Now, as I was watching, I did notice that they didn't have that element of Madam C.J. Walker boxing Addie anymore. Like the whole boxing rink has kind of been left out, but they are in this episode incorporating flashbacks from her childhood. So I wanted to ask you, Lee, what do you think that those flashbacks symbolize for her and how they move the story forward? Because there are moments where they're showing young Madam C.J. Walker, which kind of looks like she's with her parents who were slaves, and it looks as though if they're on a plantation. So it's interesting for them to, choose those clips and insert them where they do. But how do you think they move the story forward, or what are they supposed to symbolize in those moments?
Okay, so initially her parents, they were sharecroppers after Emancipation Proclamation, and I said that was in 1865. Emancipation Proclamation, the final version, actually occurred January 1st, 1863. So I believe she was born into freedom. So, but they remained sharecroppers like many Blacks who, even after Emancipation Proclamation, chose to stay on the plantations out of fear of being immersed into white society and fear of being killed if they left the plantation. Because don't forget, that atmosphere of racism and hatred didn't go away. It simply was shifted now a bit because there were laws in place to protect Blacks a bit, right? But there was still a lot of racism and lynching. So I think for her at that moment, it was more like her life was beginning to come to an end. And many people say when they're near death, they have flashbacks of their life and they see scenes from their life. You hear this a lot from people who've had near-death experiences. I think for her, it was more of just looking back and realizing how far she had come, how successful she had become in spite of where she started. I like that contrast between where she began and where she ended up, the first female millionaire. Amazing, amazing story.
I love that, looking at the contrast, because I didn't think of that. And now that you say that, it's wonderful. And it may have something to do with her being close to, the end and seeing everything. So there was this amazing moment between Addie and Madam C.J. Walker. And I wanted to ask you, Chef, do you think that this is the moment that Addie had always been yearning for? Do you think that it was just an apology that she was looking for all this time?
I don't think necessarily an apology. I think Addie was things just didn't pan out the way that she had, because you got to think, like, from what her mother beat into her head at an early age, you are better than the average Black woman. That's the ideology she grew up thinking. So after the conversation she had with Sarah episode 1, but to see how it transpired, I think she was kind of on an uphill battle after that. Because maybe in some weird reality, she thought she was better than the Black woman, or she was above that, but that wasn't true. But to see hard work kind of like overpower her ideology, I thought that is what carried her through episode 1 through 3. So episode 4, I don't know. Like, I just think she wanted some type of like reasoning, but I don't know if there was an apology that she was necessarily looking for. If she had the opportunity to blow Madam C.J. Walker out the business, she would take that every time over an apology.
Yeah. And so, Lee, I know for us as Black women and, woman to woman, Madam C.J. Walker told her straight up, like, we could have worked together and we could have made millions, but you opted out of that. Do you think in that moment, because Addie ended that scene crying, do you think that Addie had any regrets on how she had handled things?
Well, here's the thing. Madam C.J. Walker admitted she stole the formula. Now, what I read, because I did a little research on the formula, and it appeared that Madam C.J. Walker used a lot of the same elements in her mixture, but she added a few things that were different. And so it wasn't the exact formula, but it was probably the base product, the base components, and then a little extra. But I think because she knew, again, that she was going to be dying soon, that she wanted to find peace. And I think that's why she felt it was the right thing to do, because she was at heart a woman of integrity. And I think it was good for her to confess to Addie that she had actually taken her formula. I think it made her feel it was more for her than for Addie's sake. Yes, she did sort of, she said, well, we could have worked together. So that was a little bit of a justification for taking it. I gave you the opportunity to work with me and you didn't. So that was a little bit of a justification for her taking the formula. But at the end, I think she was just trying to make peace with herself so that when she died, everything would be out in the open.
Love it. And there was the convention where, we've got Madam C.J. Walker, who is about to have this big convention. This was one of my favorite parts, probably out of the entire series, was just really looking at her empire, seeing all these African-American women so glamorous and so prestigious and so successful, all off the strength of this one Black woman. It was a very, very inspiring moment for me. So Lee, how are you feeling when you really got to see from the plates, from the details of the invitations and the flyers, and everything was just there? There was like no half stepping. And I know in the Black community, we often get a stigma that, Black people do things, but they don't do 100%, or it's always right in the middle. And when I saw this, I was like, this is the standard, like this convention looks like any other convention that we would have ever seen. So I was wondering how you felt in that moment watching that.
I was thrilled. You know, the hair industry is $1 billion industry. I don't know if that figure is specifically for African American products. Probably. We spend a lot of money on our hair. And on the back of this one woman who made a difference, one person who made this significant contribution to Black society and really all of society, because she was the first female millionaire, she created an industry on her back, and she overcame so many obstacles to be successful. And so she passed that success and that inspiration along to other young Black women who could actually see themselves in her and feel like, if she can do it, I can do it.
If she can do it, I can do it. And that's exactly how I felt sitting in the room. I was like, oh my God, like, what business can I create?
Yes.
Speaking of business, Chef, I want to ask you, because ultimately Madam C.J. Walker, she passed on getting her product into Saunders drugstore, and she's going to continue to allow her women, you know, to sell and create their own businesses. From a business standpoint, do you think that was a good business move?
I believe that was a good business move, because we speak about this word integrity a lot, and I feel as though if she had not did that, that would have went against the integrity of why she even got into the business, to instill confidence, to make sure that she's, you know, inserting stability into a lot of these Black homes. So her doing that, she would have been taking food off of these Black women plates, which would have went against the initial promise that she gave them. I'm going to take care of y'all. So I thought that was okay. And I'm big on reciprocity. I'm big on, you know, like, what you give is what you receive. So I feel like that was all good karma that she planted in that moment as well. Yes, she could have thought from a capitalist standpoint, like, okay, I'll be able to rise financially if I stuck with this plan. But she said, no, I know the situation, the position that we're in as Black people, also Black women. So let me stick to my guns, and we gonna be all right. We gonna be all right, y'all.
Yeah, I was really shocked, but also it just spoke to her character and who she was and what she stood for. And it was just impactful. And I'm really hoping that, you know, people who are watching can kind of adapt that sort of mindset. Like, we are better together as opposed to one man for themselves. And at the end, when they were, each African American was kind of telling their story and where they went on and what they went on to do. Lee, I want to ask you, do you think that the hair industry would be where it is today if it wasn't for Madam C.J. Walker?
Well, let me say, I believe that, you know, we all have option or choices and options when God presents us with an opportunity, you know, to use our gifts. I think if it weren't Madam C.J. Walker, it probably would have been someone else. However, she rose to her calling and she made a difference. You know, I have a lot of different thoughts about her business model. I'm a former banker, so I'm thinking, well, you know, progressively speaking, it's great to have large distribution versus direct selling, versus retail, like in a Walmart distribution versus having like a Mary Kay model. They both work, but they're different. So I think she made the decision to, as Chef said, to help the women keep food on their tables and be able to perhaps create their own destiny. Because let's face it, if her contract with Saunders, which was a white-owned company, the likelihood that they would have hired the Black women to sell their products in their stores is highly unlikely. In the early 1900s, they would have had white women selling the product, which to me would have been perhaps a demise of the sales and the profits of the business, because it was designed for Black women. Black women can explain the process, and Black women were walking, talking examples of what the product could actually achieve for their hair growth.
And before we hop into our news and gossip and our special segment, I have one last question. I might be lying. I might have another one, but this is the last one before we hop into that. When I was watching this and just watching where we started, I really wanted to know more of how we have gotten to where we are today in the hair industry business, because as you know now, it's a lot of Asian people that run these hair stores now. It's a lot of people that are not, you know, the people that are buying it are not the people that are supplying it. And so to see where we started and to see where we are now, I guess I'm wondering, did that trigger any questions for you on how there was that transition that happened, or does it bother you now that you kind of see the work that this African American woman put in and this empire that she created? And not that it's, you know, gone to waste because it started a revolution, but what happened to it? Did that trigger any of those type of thoughts or questions for you? Lee?
For me?
Yes.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I think that the diverse communities, Asian community, the white communities have all jumped on the bandwagon when they realized how much money Black people spent on hair products, cosmetics, and so forth. And so obviously they've all designed their own formulas for darker skins and women of color. And I know I'm a product junkie, so I'm always shopping. And it's just been perhaps in the last maybe 10 years that you've seen, you know, many of the major brands coming out with makeup and different formulas for the woman of color. Now there was, of course, Fashion Fair, which was started by the Johnson Company. And they were in the early, I believe, late 40s, early 50s when they developed Fashion Fair products, which are wonderful. Many of those products have been taken out of the store. You don't see the Fashion Fair counters really in Los Angeles. I can speak to this demographic because I live in it. And so I'm not quite certain why that's happened, but I think part of it is because so many other brands are offering products for women of color versus Fashion Fair, who held the market for a long, long time. So I think there's room for everybody in a capitalistic society, as Chef was saying. But I do think that from a business perspective, the major brands found out how much money the African American community actually spends on hair products and decided they want to share those profits.
Great. And since I'm already chatting with you, Lee, do you have any news and gossip for us?
Well, what I do have, you know, the legacy that Madam C.J. Walker left was tremendous. And I know she was a philanthropist. She gave to many Black organizations and so forth. And I believe that because of one woman's vision, you know, there's a scripture that says, without a vision, the people perish. This woman chose to take hold of her vision and create a billion-dollar industry initially for her people, for African Americans. And because she stuck with her dream and didn't give up in a very difficult time in history, we are receiving the benefits of her success and her vision and her ability to overcome great and difficult obstacles and adversity. So I just want to thank those folks who produced that film and say thank you to all the hard work you put into it, because that inspires not only people of color, but women and everyone to hold on to your dream and never let go, because you never know what an influence you may have on others.
Absolutely. This was a well-needed story that we have been waiting for a long time. And I am so happy that we got that scratch itched. I'm heading over to you, Chef. Do you have our special segment?
Yes, our special segment is pretty quick today. It's Did You Know? And it's Did You Know that Madam C.J. Walker was 38 when she really started taking her business seriously? The reason why I bring that up, whether you knew that or not, is sometimes people think that they're too old to start something or it's too late, but we see this woman taking a chance on herself, creating an empire that not only gave people confidence inside of their households, but also outside of their households, inside of their skin and outside. So I'm just very proud and at people not being afraid to take a chance at ourselves. And even to piggyback what Lee was saying, we're born with these gifts and sometimes people just bury them or act like they don't exist. But we see through Madam C.J. Walker and other powerful people that if you take a chance on yourself and have just a little bit of faith, you know what I mean? I ain't trying to be preachy, but you'll be able to grow.
Yes and amen.
That you're supposed to grow. So boom.
I love that. Y'all are preaching to me. I feel like I got to go write a business plan. It has been wonderful to be on a panel with you all for such a phenomenal film. I know that so many AfterBuzzers are going to want to keep up with you all. So where can our AfterBuzzers find you, Miss Lee?
They can find me on every social media platform, Twitter at 50 plus and fabulous at Lee Broadway. Also on Instagram at 50+_and_fabulous. You can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Leigh, last name Broadway. And I hope to be able to share a little bit more about some exciting stories in the future with you.
That is wonderful. Now we know that they're going to be looking for you, Chef. Where can they find you?
You can find me on all social media platforms at chef_beans, that's with a Z, not a S, or www.chefbeans.com. I'm all over the place. I'm around. You're going to be seeing a lot of me.
I have truly had a blast. You guys can find me on all social media platforms at @McDonald, and that is DOT, not the polka dot. This has truly been an honor. Thank you, AfterBuzzers, for tuning in, and we'll catch you later.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.